community as a catalyst to success.
Are we all in the right session? Did we all mean to be in this session? Okay, brilliant. We're going to talk about community. We're going to talk about how it makes you successful. So before we begin, we probably should introduce ourselves. Mm-hmm. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Emma Keeling. Thank you. I'm a Salesforce MVP. I'm a Salesforce consultant. I specialise in the non-profit space. And I'm also a community group leader. And I'm also a very good friend with Tracy Bingham.
Thanks. I like to spend my time hiding in trees because I like to be outside. I do a little bit of everything everywhere for everyone in the Salesforce ecosystem, it seems to be, but predominantly in the hospitality vertical. But I really love networking. I love being in the room with people. Very excited about today. We had a conversation earlier that made me even more excited than Christmas. Just saying.
Very exciting. Okay. So we actually added this slide at the end, not at the end of the presentation, but when we'd done it, because we realised we didn't really explain the why as to why we're recommending all these things. So we decided to put this in. So let's talk about why and why community. Go for it, Tracy.
The Salesforce ecosystem can be really overwhelming, right? Or certainly can be if you're new to it. Sometimes, even if you've been here a while, the longer you've been here, the bigger it gets. And then Salesforce make another acquisition and it gets bigger again. And then somebody asks you about Experience Cloud, or somebody asks you about S controls, and you're like, what the, don't know. So we all have the stuff that we know, and we can obviously own what we know, but we also have a lot of stuff that we don't know. Nobody anywhere can possibly know absolutely everything about Salesforce that exists. It's just too vast. You can try, like we all try, right? But until you've had some real life experience, in our opinion, of delivering a project for a customer that is really using these tools, you can go and search about things and you can learn about things, but you don't necessarily really understand how that's going to be implemented and the real life obstacles that you're going to come over when you're not taking the happy path. So all of this stuff down here is all of our hidden community. And, you know, we know a lot of people now, which is great, but we don't know everybody. So I know Tom, but Tom, is there anybody else in the room that you know that I might not know?
Come on, Tom. You must know someone.
Yes.
We're new friends.
Yes. I want to say Vicky. No.
But I appreciate you confidently calling me the wrong name.
Yeah. Oh, I know Mark.
Excellent. Okay, I know Mark too. But Mark, do you know somebody that we don't know? Excellent. What do you do?
Marketing.
Excellent. You don't do marketing, you hate it.
Don't like marketing.
But we need some people that do marketing,
Yeah.
right? Because somebody somewhere is going to ask us about marketing.
Absolutely.
So that was kind of what we wanted to talk about today, is actually, you know, even if Emma's a MVP now, hence the very sexy t-shirt she has
I
on
decided
today.
to wear the nice t-shirt because I do like the t-shirt.
Absolutely. So she knows a lot of people in the ecosystem, more than me, because of all the things that she gets involved in. And she's in the not-for-profit space, which I dabble in a little bit, but not to the same degree. So we can sometimes offer a recommendation to somebody if we need help with something that's not within our own skill set. And then that makes us more successful because we can go out to our customers. I was sat with a not-for-profit a couple of weeks ago asking me about a warehouse scheduling tool that they could then have traceability through all of the things that they're sending out from their food banks. And I'm like, don't know, but bear with me. I'll just go on the not-for-profit community and just see if anyone else knows. I got 3 recommendations within 5 minutes. And that's the power of community to make us successful. As much as, you know, ChatGPT and AI is all the buzzwords this week, we still need a bit of human, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a great analogy of us. I would say behind any successful Salesforce professional, whether that's a consultant, an admin, a developer, whatever, this is probably what you see. So let's take Tom as an example because he sat there and has lined himself up for this. But what you see of Tom is here, but it's going to be all of this. Because I know that behind the scenes, Tom is having conversations with Vanessa Grant. He's having conversations with all these other people. He's doing his research. He's on Slack. He's chatting with people. He's looking into stuff. He's got a network. And you don't see that. And often your employer doesn't see that, right? They don't know that Tom sat there and gone, no, I don't know. But it's fine because someone will know.
And with 6 degrees of separation, if we had enough time, which we don't, so we won't put you through the pain of it, but we could probably connect everybody in this room through everybody in this room. So you might not have the answer, but you probably know somebody that knows somebody that has the answer.
Absolutely.
So I am a real big fan of networking, as I mentioned. I do like to talk. But it's about what we're planting now that we may possibly be able to harvest later. So I always try and be kind. I always try and approach things with a bit of empathy for where the other person is coming from. And I try to make sure that the work that I'm doing is good and memorable in the right ways. So a prime example of doing your best at a certain point in time will harvest later. I won a contract this week based on some volunteering that I did 15 years ago. But because I did that volunteering 15 years ago, they know that I know their business. So when it comes to implementing Salesforce, I'm already ahead of the competition because they know that I know their business. So always do your best.
And I think that goes for both, what you can do from we can all talk about volunteering and we can all talk about things that we do, not being paid, but also just, that thing of like, don't burn your bridges. Like it's so true in this environment because right now I have a former client pretty much and a existing client sat next to each other in the room. They're over there. But basically because, did a good job with one, introduced me to another, amazing. And then, now they're going to talk to each other and then now as admins, they're going to grow together and that's amazing, right? And it's trying to bring people together quite genuinely and just keeping in mind that, when you move on from wherever you are, you want to leave things, ideally in a good place, and we've I was in a session earlier about documentation and they were saying, leaving good documentation, but also it's not necessarily, if you genuinely can't, for one reason or another, your boss has never ever given you the time to ever write anything down because do you know what? You only work 20 hours a week and really they need 60. Leave some handover with at least some key points. Leave a note that says, be careful with that, don't turn that off, whatever you do, it's going to break. Because people will remember that, right? They'll remember you left that note. And that, in years to come can pay dividends. It's amazing people I see on LinkedIn from years ago who sort of go full circle.
Yeah.
And somebody who I worked with when I was in hospitality randomly is now one of Tracy's clients just because we sort of connected the dots and I was like, I'm not the right person for you, but this person is. And that's just from having a relationship with them.
Yeah. So some people love networking. Some people does it because she has to. So I wanted to like something that was actually helpful that you could take away from the room. And in my past life, before, it's the dark side now really, but before I worked in Salesforce, I worked in hospitality and I managed UK sales and marketing teams. Very different skill sets. So I did a lot of training with my teams on how to read a room. And I think this is a great picture of how to read a room if you're somebody that's not particularly comfortable at going in and having to make a conversation with somebody. Because body language is really, really important, way more important than what actually comes out of our mouth in a lot of situations, because your body language will show what somebody's really thinking, sometimes just their face. And it gives you the energy of what that person's saying as well. So in this kind of situation, you can see that these two guys are in a really, really deep conversation. They're facing one another. He's gesticulating. I'm not going to interrupt these two because they look like there's something important going on there.
Unless you run in for the big hug.
Maybe I do sometimes
now,
do
we
that.
were saying, if you really know somebody, and I've had somebody last night, I was standing in exactly that sort of way, one-to-one, and somebody just ran up behind one of them and said, just have to give you a big hug, just so you know I'm here, but I'm going to go now and I'll see you in a bit. And they exited. But it was really cool because they'd made the point, it wasn't me who got the hug, unfortunately, it was them. But they made the point of like, I'm here. I said I'd tell you when I got here. always need a hug. But yeah, but you know, it's like you say, but if you don't know them, going and sort of standing like there might be a bit strange. Like, hi, hello. You know.
Whereas these two, obviously they're having a conversation, but they're completely open. Even their body language is like, yeah, we're having a chat. I don't really know him and I don't really know what he's talking about. Is there anyone else around that can come and have a chat with me? Like, it's much more open. So going along and asking an open question into that conversation is going to be easier than hovering around these two, waiting for one of them to finish. And then I don't want to fall off the edge, but this guy here, right, he's been to get a drink. He didn't find anybody at the drink table. He's gone past these guys. They're like both really into their conversations. He's like, oh, please, somebody come and talk to me. Like, I don't want to have to ask questions. Just ask me something would be much easier. Like that, great. Go find them. Go speak to them. They'll be really grateful. They'll chat to you for ages.
Absolutely. So when we look at this sort of room, who does this absolutely petrify? Okay. Now, great. What would you do? Somebody brave enough to say what you would do in this circumstance. Fair enough, okay. Anybody else?
The server.
Yeah. So Tracy and I talked about this a bit. We looked at it and I also said, you know something? See these tables at the back? Like there's actually nothing wrong with if you don't want to go in that room and you don't feel comfortable, but you know that you need to put yourself in that space. You know, if you've got your laptop with you, go sit down at a table, get your laptop out, do some emails. You're still
or even just on your phone.
Or even on your phone, whatever it is, but you're still in the space, right? You're still putting yourself there. And it may be that as things go on, people come and sit with you. That could be equally terrifying. But, you know, it might be that you sort of just, okay, I'm now in the room. I'm going to go get a drink. At that point, you might speak to somebody. You might see someone you know. The other thing I was saying to people is a few people said to me, both for this event and for World Tour, they were like, I hate networking. I hate it so much. I don't want to do networking. I was like, but for me, these events, as much as I don't know, probably maybe a good 65% of people in this room, to me, these are no longer networking events. They obviously are, because I'm going to meet loads of new people and talk to loads of new people. But in my mind, they're not. This is a time to come and hang out with my pals. This is a time to come and see people. And it's a bit like almost these people almost being your colleagues, right? So if you've ever worked in a big corporate environment, there will have been hundreds, if not thousands of people that you did not know, right? But you also could go to like, you know, the IT office and like, hello, I've got a problem. Can you, oh, I know your name. I've seen it on an email. Can you help me? You kind of have to treat it in the same kind of way, right? You kind of have to treat it as, especially with a Salesforce event, we're all here for a common reason. So chances are they're going to be willing to talk to you about Salesforce. Now, if they're not, I apologise in advance.
They're in the wrong venue.
They're in the wrong venue, clearly, and you might want to escort them out or let security know. But theoretically, they're here for a reason, right? So even just, why are you here? Even just at the end of the session, oh, where are you headed next? Or did you enjoy the session? Or even just, you know, just trying to get yourself to that place where there's people I recognise at the venue, and I'm dreadful with names, so I'm always like looking at people's badges. But there's people I'll recognise from being online. There's people who I will have chatted to at length. I actually walked into an event last night and I walked straight up to Andy Utkin, who I've actually never met in person. I literally walked up to him and he went, oh, hey, Emma, how you doing? He gave me a big hug because we have interacted, like he posts stuff on LinkedIn, every now and again I comment, we're in a Slack space together, and we just kind of like, it didn't even, like, somebody said, no, have you met Andy before? I was like, no. They're like, oh. I was like, no, I've never met him, but we've been connected enough that kind of is where it comes from.
So this is the flip side, because I know you were getting ahead of yourself.
I totally
I just want you to switch on.
That's why Tracy's here.
Yeah, we even each other out, right? I can reach stuff up high, and Emma makes sure I've got food.
Ish.
So I love this quote because our greatest weaknesses are always the flip side of our greatest strengths. And actually, sometimes weaknesses aren't even a weakness. We went to the Women in Tech group the other week and they were talking about understanding your weaknesses as your power, because if you're aware of them, then, you can do something about it. And actually, it might be a weakness for a reason. And I won't go into all of that. But in terms of the flip side of networking, as Emma was alluding to, it's not always in person. The world has changed since COVID. We make connections with people in tons of different ways. That's what I'm going to say about that because we've got more.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, talking about your weaknesses. So somebody last night commented that we were at to context here, we were at the London's Calling speaker event last night, which was great. As a speaker, you get to go to an event. Wicked. Got some drinks. Really fun. But somebody commented that I hadn't been circulating in the room. Now, Tracy was like a bouncy ball.
Off I go.
Oh my goodness.
La, la, la.
Somebody commented that I hadn't moved. But what was quite interesting was it was all standing. It was very,
She's like the
very...
queen. Everybody came to her.
But it was very warm in that
It
room.
was, yeah.
And I'd managed to notice there was a window. And I was stood next to this window, which meant I had somewhere to put my drink. Great. And it was cool. And I was near the bar. And that wasn't, it was great. Anyway, but what was great was I saw so many people because everyone had to go to the bar to get a drink, right? So actually, somebody said, I didn't really see you like floating around. And I was like, well, no, I wasn't. But I probably spoke to as many people as Tracy did.
Yeah.
But I was just stood there. I was not giving up my nice, cool spot, okay? And actually people came to me and they're like, oh, it's nice and cool here. I'm like, yeah, got the breeze. So yeah, it's also that, like, as much as I put myself out there and people will see me online and all that, I don't really want to walk around the room and like, let me interrupt this convo. Oh, no, not that one. They're talking about something else. Oh, no, I'm stuck now. Oh, help. What do I do? Actually, I was quite happy because some people walked past me and just said hello. Some people walked past me and stopped. People walked past me, like Tom came at one point, we had a long conversation. Other people joined us and left or whatever, but it just worked really nicely. And
I came back to check on you every now and then. Make sure you're all right.
You did. And you came back for the breeze.
The breeze, yeah.
So when we talk about connections, I put together a bit of a slide. Now, I can be completely honest, this is not extensive. Like, I could have gone on forever. My husband came along and he's like, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I'm trying to just kind of give some sort of context to the whole idea of things being connected and people being connected and how I've connected with all these people. So if I just give I'm then going to give a brief overview. I could be here all day and you don't need to hear my life story, but my background was in hospitality. So I started work. I basically left university in 2007, and then I got a job at a hotel because they employ people, right? And I'd been doing that while I was at uni and got a job working for Holiday Inn, which was great because then there was a financial crisis. So anybody who did a 4-year course was screwed. God, I only did 3. Anyway, started working at the Holiday Inn. Ended up going on secondment, partly because of the financial crisis. They couldn't hold down my salary and reservations and revenue and whatever I did. So I got shipped off to Scotland. So I kept jumping on a plane every other week to go up to Scotland. And that's where I met my friend Yvonne. Now, Yvonne, unfortunately, isn't here because she's sat on a beach in Turkey. But that's where I met my friend Yvonne. And Yvonne and I have now been friends for something like 15 years. It's ridiculous. But then I ended up going up to the Intercontinental Hotels Group. So I went to corporate, and that's where I got introduced to Salesforce. And I started to go to community events. And what's really funny here is that at my first community event, the partner who used to use their offices to host it, there was a lady called Yvette. And Yvette was an awesome BA. Now, funnily enough, Yvette then left to go and work for one of their clients. And one of my other friends, who I'd randomly met at another Salesforce event in Birmingham, and only connected with because on Twitter I've been saying, I'm going to this event. And he'd replied and said, so am I. So when I walked into the room, this person who I'd never met in person went, hi. So I went over and sat with them. So I ended up talking to Jack. Now, remember Yvonne, who I met in hotels, just as COVID hit, she got made redundant. And she got no job. So she did some free open university training. And at that point, it was like, pre-training? Trailhead. And she retrained and she became an awesome admin and needed a job. She ended up going and working with Jack, who was already working with Yvette. And I'm like, oh my God, all these people I know from different places all now work together. They no longer work together. They've all got different jobs. So they're now kind of circulating in that space and it keeps going, right? So, you know, many years ago, Mark and I went to Your Dream In and there I met all these people. And then it's like Justina, and then Justina really wanted to come to the sprint. So I invited her along and said, come. And then it goes off into this like US contingent and all this just other stuff. But you just realise that everything works its way back. Like Tracy and I met at the Crowne Plaza Newcastle at an event when my boss said to me, oh, you should meet Tracy Bingham. She's going to leave her current role in sales and she's going to go and do Salesforce freelance. So we connected, we chatted, we had a drink, great. Many years later, when I got to the point where I was like, I'm going to leave IHG, I rang Tracy, who said, just do it, jump, do it.
Take the lead.
Take the leap. I'm here for you. I'll help support you. So it kind of goes on. And do you know what? I would challenge you all to go home and have a good think about this and think about where things link together. I've got to point out the picture of Tom because he's really happy. He's on a slide. But like Tom.
Twice,
He is.
yeah.
So Tom does the Be More podcast on like 60 episodes, right, Tom? So Tom and I got chatting at London's Calling last year because I walked straight up to him and said, do you know so-and-so? Because they'd been chatting on Twitter and I just wanted some context around this person because I didn't know them. Tom barely knew me and was like, should I be talking to you about another person who you're now asking me about? But it was really fun. And I agreed to be on his podcast. I then said, oh my God, you should do Be More Hospitality with Tracy. Oh, and do you know Michael Klodner? Because like, he does like the sprinty thing at the non-profit things. And he was like, no, I don't. So yeah, by the way, Tom's recruiting people. Oh my God, we should do Be More Findoc. That would be cool.
Okay, lots of words, not going to go through all of them.
No.
Sorry, really boring slide, but I needed to make sure I didn't forget anything. So there's lots and lots of ways in and ways out of a conversation. And actually, and I did use LinkedIn on purpose, it doesn't have to be in real life. I meet so many people through LinkedIn because I comment on things, I like things. I don't broadcast content, don't have time in my life to do that, and I don't have the inclination to want to write stuff either. But I consume a lot of other people's content. I consume a lot of blogs. I'll always, if I can, be supportive on that when I've read something. Had a chat with Paul Ginsberg last night about the whole neurodivergent stuff that he's been putting out on LinkedIn. Like, great content. So I caught up with him and told him what I thought of his content. But I've already been commenting anyway, so he knows. You know, you don't have to go it alone. You can go with a friend, you know. Like, we often will go, oh, do you know, I recognise that face. Can you remember their name? Or do you know that person? I don't know that person, but I'm looking, you know. So you don't always have to just go it alone. Yeah.
And just back to LinkedIn, I would say, keep your profile up to date. You know, make sure you, as much as this sounds a bit, but just make sure you put on there what you're doing, what you're looking for. You know, are you open to work? I'm going to look at a person in the room here who put on his profile that he was open to work. I needed a CRMA expert. I found Louis literally on LinkedIn by literally searching for CRMA expert LinkedIn lists of people, like literally going through, and was able to look at Louis' profile and go, oh yeah, I can see where he's worked for before. Oh, and he went there, and then he went back there. Well, he must be pretty decent, right? If somebody's had him back. Always remember that somebody gets re-recruited. That's not a bad thing. I was like, oh, he's probably pretty decent, and he is pretty decent. So if anyone needs a CRMA expert, he's pretty decent. Yeah. Like, but what I was saying is make sure it's on there because it does help. And it definitely helps. The more active you are, you do recognise people. You do, like, I'm always seeing Jolie's posts, and it keeps things front of mind. I'm always seeing Dan and the Findoc team posting. Like, it's amazing. Like, a lot of these corporate brands, I'm going to say, do it very well. But actually, you don't have to be part of the corporate brand. Tracy's told me so many times when people have suddenly said, hey, I saw you comment on something on LinkedIn and I remembered that I really need some help with something. Can we catch up? And she's like, how does this keep happening? And I'm like, but it's just because you're present and you're in the space and people just see you and it just reminds them, right?
Hard to miss. I'm generally wearing luminous pink or, bright green, purple. I think also it's important to understand that you don't have to stay with that person that you're chatting to for the entire time that the networking session has happened, because you feel like you are now invested in them because you've had a 10-minute conversation. The whole point of networking is to see as many people in the room as you possibly can, to seek out those people you can then rely on when you get a question you don't know the answer to. And other people in the room are doing that too. So, it's okay to say, oh, I've just seen Mark. I just need to go and say hello with him, but I'll catch up with you later. Or a lady to me last night, she was like, I need to go home and get my rest because I need to be prepared for tomorrow. We weren't quite so behaved. We didn't go home at 9:30.
She nearly killed me off, honestly.
But the lady that was going, who wanted to respect her rest, which is great, she linked in with me before she went. It's another great way to finish a conversation, to say, I've really got to go, but can we connect? Whatever that may be. And again, doesn't need to be in real life. And just be nice about it, right? Like, I'm really enjoying our chat, but I am dying for a wee. I've been talking to people for 3 hours because I get so excited and I really, really do need a pee. And
I was also saying, sometimes we overthink these things. You're having a conversation with somebody and Tracy says, I'm really sorry, I have to go, desperate for a wee. And then 5 minutes later, you see her talking to somebody else. Don't immediately think, oh God, I must have been so boring. She's left.
I just haven't got through the room yet.
She just
I'm on my way.
Got the room yet. Or she's back. Somebody grabbed her on the way back in. Equally, I would say, I've had people say to me, can I hang around with you? So other this Debbie's here. My other friend Debbie isn't here. Don't know where she is. Where's Debbie? Anyway, she must be at another session. I'll allow that. She was laughing earlier when I said to her, where are you going? And she was like, why? Am I meant to go a certain place? But anyway, Debbie last year at World Tour, she actually said to me beforehand, can I come with you? And I'm going to be completely honest, I want to stay with you because I'm really overwhelmed. I was like, yeah. And she hung out with me or Mark. We took her to the keynote, almost like we took her along, sat her down, you'll be fine. But it just meant that, and then this year when she came, she was a lot more confident about going and seeing people and moving around because she'd been to the venue before, she knew where it was, and I think that's the thing, ask. And if you have to just literally, I'm going to say it sounds awful, but wander around with somebody else because that makes you more confident, why not? You're going to meet so many people that way.
Also, sometimes, things are overwhelming. I chaperoned some of my clients to World Tour because they'd never been to World Tour before. They were like, I've heard there's thousands and thousands of people going. All right, yeah, probably 15 or 16,000, something like that. They're like, and then my account exec has sent me this list of shit that I'm meant to go and do and see. And it doesn't all look relevant to me. And I'm like, go figure, give me the list. I'll tell you which ones you should and shouldn't go to. But at the same time, having that person that already knows what the score is was really helpful for them to then go, right, all of that area there is app exchange or partners. You've already got a partner and you've already got a shit ton of apps. So you don't need to worry about that whole section of the room because you're not purchasing anything. So let's worry about this bit over here, which is the campground, or let's go and have a bit of a deeper dive into data cloud. So giving without expectations is really important. Goes back to one of our first slides of sowing the seeds for then getting stuff back in the future. You can't go in, I don't believe, thank you. You can't go into a room expecting there to be an immediate outcome because that's not the way life works generally. And then when we're talking about own it, again, I said it before, but we have to hear things 3 times before they really go in our brains. So own what you know, but own what you don't know.
And also own who you are. I'm gonna add this thing because we haven't said this already. You may notice Tracy and I get on really well, right? We're very good friends. We dress very, very differently. Tracy has 4 jumpsuits with her. I kid you not.
Like a
not only does she love a jumpsuit,
in
she
that
loves
tiny
it
bag,
much.
by the way.
She's got all these jumpsuits. Me, I literally have a catalogue of Salesforce t-shirts. I mean, honest to God, I'm at the point now where I have to hide them from my husband, and he actually found some the other day and said, "What are these and where have they come from?" And I was like, I don't know, I really don't know. I was like, please let me take them away. And I was like, oh my God, I forgot they were in that bag. But but what I'm saying is, own who you are to a degree. Now, there's nuances to this. If you work in fintech, you might need to come suited and booted to your event, right? That's cool too. But what I would say is we always say don't judge a book by its cover, but just realise that people are open. I've heard people say, oh, I'm terribly intimidated when everyone stood around in their Trailblazer hoodie. And you're like, I don't want to interrupt and I don't want to talk to people. Because I'm like, yeah, they were all you once. Like, it's fine. You're not gonna come over to a group of people in their Trailblazer hoodies and be like, hi, and just be like, you're not wearing a hoodie, go away. Like, it's just not like that, right? So just be you, but also I would say be you as much as you can, right? And I'm sure you've gone into this imposter syndrome chat over here that's already taken place. But be you as much as you feel comfortable with us, right? I did a corporate training course when I was at the hotel, like 15 odd years ago, where they talked about like your personal window and opening your window. But what I quite liked about that was they said, open your window as much as you're comfortable with. You don't have to tell people everything about your existence if you want to, go for it. But just showing a little bit or sharing a little bit, or, you know, like Debbie and I will chat a bit about our kids, like, oh, it's end of school. Like, it's end of school for Debbie's daughter today, and it's end of school for my daughter on Tuesday. What's your plans over the summer? We've got something to chat about. But, you know, you don't necessarily have to go into everything about your life if you don't want to. There's some things people don't want to talk about. There's some things that people are like, you know what, I'm here today because life's dead stressful. I'm just glad to be away from it. And actually, that's cool too. So, you know, just what I say is just try and be genuine. And then that goes into all of this, right? Just, you don't necessarily expect anything in return. So I became a Salesforce MVP this year, and some people said to me, oh, well, you must have known. No, I didn't know. I didn't do what I do because I wanted to be. Don't get me wrong, it's great being an MVP. I love it. I've got a free t-shirt on, always about the swag. But, you know, and actually it has opened up another network of people, and it is amazing, and I love it. But it's not why I run my non-profit group. It's not, I'll be honest, the reason I run my non-profit group is to help people. People who message me after we're tour, and I'm going to smile at one of them and say, oh, thank you so much. I've had such a great time, and I've learnt this, and I've done this, and thank you. That's why I do it, right? Because I do it for the people. I didn't really do it. As I say, it's great. The recognition is fantastic.
It's ever-increasing circles.
Absolutely. Yeah, but that's just not, and I think there are a lot of people in the ecosystem, and I don't know, 90%, I don't know, I'm going to look at Tom and say, there's a huge amount of people who give into their ecosystem and they literally expect nothing in return. And a lot of it is pay it forward, right? So I help Jolie with something. Jolie helps Mark with something. Mark helps Debbie with something. Debbie helps Tom with something. Because it's all about that pay it forward. Because chances are, especially, you know, if I'm working with a developer, they might be helping me. I mean, if it's something to do with code, it's not me, right? But there is that, it just carries on. As you say, it's that ever-increasing circles, and it's just that impact it makes.
Mm-hmm. So we had to put something in here that was a bit more Salesforce, right? So we chose omnichannel. And then we've talked about all these things already, but we can do stuff in real life. That was before it got busy at World Tour. We can do stuff. That's virtual. You know, loads of us have had to do way more of that. And, you know, you sometimes meet somebody. There was somebody that I met last night that I thought was about this big. They were that big. I was like, whoa, hi, this is you in real life. Like, because I've never seen them stand up, which is equally fun too.
I have met people in real life who, when I remember meeting one person at an event, she said to me, oh my God, we've never met before in real life. And I was like, no, that isn't possible. I've known you for all this time. She was like, no, we've never met. And I was sure we must have done. Like, our paths must cross. She was like, no, we've never been in the same room together. And I was like, okay, I chat to you just like I do people who I have met in real life, and there's just no difference, which is quite curious.
It's
really
the same with Steph from Ivy. So I work with Ivy Restaurants, and the head of sales for the UK and Miami, random title, but that's what it is. I never met her in real life at her previous company. We did a whole project through COVID, delivered it to the team. I never went to their venue. And yet she then left and went to another company who were then doing a Salesforce project, brought me in on that project. We met for the first time at her second company, and it felt, again, really odd. I'm like, sure I've seen you before. Like, I just went straight in for a hug because I'm a hugger. Luckily, she was a hugger too, so that wasn't a problem. But yeah, you know, you can make such strong relationships now that don't necessarily need to be in a face-to-face environment. And then, you know, there's good old fashioned picking up the phone.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny with the world of podcasts. I've had a couple of people come up to me being like, "Oh yeah, it's really interesting your take on project management." I was like, "What?" Like, "Oh, I did a podcast where I talked about it," because I was thinking, I haven't spoken to you about project management. It's like, okay, but I
Also,
find that
we had we had Fuji from the Maldives. We almost took it. We were tempted, right?
Yeah.
He worked for the Lux Collective. Who'd heard Emma on a podcast from years ago that he'd been listening on his way to work, and he then phoned us as a company to go, "Can you come and do this big tech project for us?" I'm like, "What is it?" No, that's way too big.
Way too big. Way too big. No, we're good. But yeah, it's really interesting though, that level of like, you think that you don't never really think you're listening to a podcast, you're kind of networking. I mean, it's one-sided, right? Because you're kind of listening and consuming them, but then being able to comment as soon when you see them, like, "Oh, it's really interesting you talk about this," and they're like, "Oh," like, just gives you a conversation starter, just gives you a place to begin, and it's pretty cool.
So it's multifaceted. I think we've really hammered that point home now. Network, assemble your army, give without expectation. You will reap the rewards, even if it's not from the initial person that you gave to, it will come from somewhere else, and make it omni-channel.
So this was a slide that Tracy added lastminute.com when we were actually looking at it at 1:00 this morning. Could you not? But you know,
well, you needed to make sure that you had eyes on it before we stood up here.
But luckily it was really good. But you know, this is kind of the concept of the community. You know, you can show this in so many ways, but Tracy...
Equally, this was me last night as we're walking into the speakers' dinner. Yes, I'm ready. Let's go.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, this is kind of that. You're always kind of going up, no matter if you realise you're always heading in that
you're
sort
always
of
expanding
direction.
your knowledge, you're expanding your network.
And there's so many ways to do it. And you don't realise that just by coming here today, you'll have expanded your network further and further.
And equally,
further.
if you hate doing that in real life, fine. Don't do it. Do all the other
do
some
all the
other
other stuff. You know, find where you're comfortable and kind of embrace that space, right? And that can be small group conversations, you know, that can be just chatting with people online, that can be just, you know, just showing up, answering some questions on the Trailblazer community. Like, it's amazing where people just show up, turn up to this once a year. I mean, you'll be amazed how many people come here once a year, and then they come again, and then they come again, and by the time, you know, they clearly got a little group around them because, oh, I saw you last year, isn't this cool? Let's go to this session together. Like, it's just kind of how it works.
So with 1 minute to go, maybe even 30 seconds, any questions?
More of a comment on a question. I mean, you probably know why it's in front of my mind, but when you talk about kind of doing the community stuff kind of in a way that works for you, one thing that's absolutely okay to do is if you need to, is to take a slight step back. Because sometimes, you know, it takes a lot of energy, a lot of time to do community stuff, and sometimes life just kind of makes you kind of go, actually, I need to take a little step back and take care of myself for a bit.
100%.
Absolutely. And I think the thing about the community is the rest of the community should be there to support you in that, right? And that's the whole point of there being a community, right? That when you do need to take that step back, there isn't almost, I'm not going to say a void, but look at London's Calling as an event. You know, unfortunately, Amanda passed away and isn't here this year,
sad.
but the event's still going. It's still going strong. It's, you know, it's left a hole in people's hearts, but the event still continues and still allows people to join us. And I think it's the same in many parts of the community, where, as you say, there are people who you'll talk about historically, or do you remember so-and-so who used to do so much stuff? But what's funny is they leave a legacy. So there's many people historically who wrote blog articles, who, you know, did training, who did, you know, things recorded that are still there and are still consumable today because they're still relevant. I always think of David Liu and his Apex. So anybody who starts to dabble in Apex, when I first started in the ecosystem and really got into it, there was all this stuff. You don't see anything from David now, right? But it's still relevant because it's Apex and it's not changed. So it's like this legacy that people live, and they don't even realise, because there's no way he did that to leave a legacy. He just didn't. you put it out there for people to consume, and it just lives on.
But I suppose that's about looking at what's successful for you, because if you're doing something that you're passionate about and it brings you joy, that's going to make you feel wealthy. Not necessarily in a financial sense, but in an energy sense. Sorry, I'm a hippie too. I teach yoga and stuff.
Totally.
So like for me, I went to a session a little while back that was not inside the Salesforce ecosystem, because I got very short attention span, so I have to do a lot of variety of things. And it was a thing about social media, because I always struggle with content for social media. As I previously said, I now know that one of my weaknesses is I am not a content writer. But somebody said, well, why are you doing it? And I was like, don't know. It didn't bring me anything. It didn't bring me joy. It didn't bring me customers. So I don't do Facebook anymore. I put the occasional yoga post up there because there's some of my people need to understand whether I'm going to be in class or not this week, or whether the hall's available. But in terms of actual content that I put out there, nothing. I stopped. But then that then became a success, because I wasn't wasting all this time on energy on doing something that I absolutely hated. I spent it on the stuff that actually I really enjoyed. And on that note, we're probably over time, and we probably need to stop talking, because there's lunch, isn't there, next?
Yeah, I think so.
Need
Thank
food.
you.
Thank you.